The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is not a 10 out of 10 game. Now before you get your knickers in a knot, give me a chance to explain. From what I understand, people see this bombardment of perfect scores from IGN, GameSpot, and so on, and think to themselves that because they got a perfect score, that means that reviewers are calling it a perfect game. However, most of these review outlets are quick to point out that a perfect 10 does not a perfect game make. It only means that a game is, in their opinion, an essential purchase. If we were to base a rating scale on how perfect a video game is, Breath of the Wild would most definitely not be a 10. And even on the scale of 10 being an essential purchase, I don't think Breath of the Wild is deserving of that either. Put simply, Breath of the Wild is not the perfect game we were all secretly hoping for. So why the fuck am I so addicted to this piece of shit? Before we jump in, fair warning, I will be discussing elements of the game that may be considered a minor spoiler, such as lesser known gameplay mechanics, one of the main storyline bosses, and pieces of equipment, because apparently our pussies are so red right now that we have to complain about a throwaway sword or piece of clothing being spoiled. And I know that was admittedly very sexist, but that comes with being Australian, unfortunately. Otherwise our traffic lights would depict men and women equally. That was a joke. I don't really agree with... This intro is a train wreck. Anyway, this video won't be super long. I essentially just want to share my experience with Breath of the Wild, what worked for me and what didn't. I'm not going to go into Jim Sterling levels of negativity here, which is totally okay, guys. Jim still liked the game. He did nothing wrong. Hashtag free Jim Sterling. But I don't think the game is flawless. Which is not to undermine the fact that Nintendo have created something really special here, even though everybody is going to look at this game with different levels of enthusiasm. I mean, you tell me what you think when I say that this Zelda feels as much like a Ubisoft game as it does a traditional Zelda game. Some of you might turn your noses up and say, well, that just sounds like Nintendo ripping my balls out of my scrotum with their bare hands and proceeding to play a friendly game of ping pong with them. But listen, okay, listen, just listen for a sec. It works. It's an absolute miracle that this works as well as it does. Link's adventures are no longer confined to linear dungeons and semi-open hub worlds. You now have the freedom to go in any direction you like at any given point and complete the game's tasks in almost any order you like. Or completely ignore the main dungeons and head straight to Hyrule Castle to fight Calamity Ganon himself. You'll get your Hylian hide handed to you on a silver platter, but the option is there. This is the first open world game I've played that truly feels open. The open world itself is gorgeous, not necessarily in terms of graphical fidelity, as some textures are sloppy and frame rate issues are abound in early and late game areas, but in terms of style and scope, it really is breathtaking. No pun intended. And the world itself is admittedly empty feeling at some points, but I don't think this is bad. In fact, it's the opposite. If this game were cluttered with things to do at literally every turn, I think it would take away from the sense of discovery when you actually do find one of the game's 120 shrines or 900 Korok seeds. Discovering something in Breath of the Wild is a special moment, made even more special by the fact that these discoveries actually reward you with hearts, stamina, and inventory space. It's an incentive to explore, something that no other open world game has ever given me, at least the ones I've played. This amazing open world also cleverly plays in the combat. You could charge into an enemy camp guns blazing, or you could push a boulder down a cliff and flatten them, glide overhead and rain justice from above, lol Overwatch reference, or wait until night to sneak in and kill everybody in one hit. Every encounter feels different due to the landscape, despite the limited amount of different enemies. The controversial weapon durability mechanic makes combat feel different as well. Link handles a sword, bow, or boomerang much like he used to in previous games, but now he can wield greatswords, spears, axes, clubs, and wands, and they all break after extended use. Well, I say extended, but apparently all of Hyrule's blacksmiths made their weapons out of glass and shame, so weapons will likely break after only a few enemy encounters. There are a whole bunch of people who hate this mechanic, and I understand their unbridled hatred, but I don't necessarily agree. It reminds me of Halo, of all things. Guns in Halo had very little ammo, encouraging you to experiment with weapons you wouldn't otherwise normally use. They do break way too easily though, I agree. I think doubling their durability would make the system a lot more bearable. Some have said the constant switching of weapons takes you out of the experience, which, you know, Ratchet and Clank never did or anything. Though at least that one had a wheel. Breath of the Wild needs a wheel select or something. However, overall, the inventory system needs work. Switching weapons mid-battle is fine, but ducking in and out of the pause menu to eat food items when you're low on hearts, change clothes to adapt to the weather, or drop weapons, bows, or shields when you have no room for new weapons is a cumbersome affair that can remove you from the experience at times. A simple fix to dropping weapons would be to allow us to drop them while selecting them in-game, rather than from the pause menu. So far all the stuff I've mentioned hasn't actually been all that bad, but there's one thing I dislike with a passion, and it's the story. Oh my fucking god, is it boring and formulaic. Link wakes up after having a 100-year-long granny nap, and Zelda's disembodied voice tells him to go smack Calamity Ganon a few times with a blade. That's kind of it. I mean, there's stuff about divine beasts and memories from 100 years ago you can find, but I can't be bothered in caring all that much. Sure, you can head off to one of the 4 main dungeons and experience their stories, but they're just as boring and formulaic, to be honest. In my first 20 hours, I tackled Zora's Domain, where one of the divine beasts corrupted by Ganon was raining down perpetually on the area, and don't even get me fucking started on the rain in this fucking game! And you're tasked with fixing it. The characters on display here are are less than stellar. Sidon's pretty fucking hot, sure, but outside of wanting him to stick his shark dick in my ass more than anything, he serves little purpose. And Mipha, the Princess of the Zoras, is the sole reason why I believe introducing voice acting in a Zelda game wasn't the greatest of ideas.
Every time I would heal you, just as I'm doing right now. I was always willing to heal your wounds. Even back then. I'm not sure how to put this into words. I'm actually quite embarrassed to say it. Precious Grace is ready.
Why do people like her? She sounds terrible. She has boring dialogue. She's not even that cute. Sidon is cuter. Let me fuck the shark! And it's a real shame that the story falls flat, because the rest of the game exudes style and personality. NPCs are often quite funny, for example, and the world itself is in such ruin that it sparks a morbid curiosity within the player to explore. I'd argue that the world itself is the best character in the game. But could you imagine Breath of the Wild's world with the simple but charming story and characters of, say, Wind Waker? Even Skyward Sword had somewhat of an interesting story, but here's Breath of the Wild presenting players with an open world that begs to be explored, and a story that's as complex and interesting as a store-bought burger patty. I mean, Ganon's previous incarnations revolve around him being an all-powerful gargantuan man whose very gaze intimidates. But here, he's just some fucking noxious gas with eyes that's causing global warming or some crap. And though I've heard that there are some emotional moments strewn throughout, the saddest thing I've seen is my poor horse number 16 slip off a cliff and die. I grew more attached to random horses I found in the wild than I did to actual main characters. To be fair though, everybody loves Carmageddon and Agro and Vale, whom I named because I would love to be ridden like a horse someday. There's also Change, but I don't really like him. Outside of the story, characters, and other stuff I've previously mentioned, there's not much else that rubs me the wrong way. I think Link's stamina meter is kinda low when you first start, so sprinting is a bit annoying. The main dungeons are pretty decent, but are nowhere near as huge and challenging as previous Zelda games. And while the shrines are an excellent addition to the game, they start to feel a bit meh as you get closer to finishing all of them. But for every questionable gameplay element that I think of, a genuinely good one pops into mind. Sure, we've got Ubisoft Towers trademark littered all over the map, but they require effort to climb. And instead of planting icons all over your map, they simply reveal the region map to you and give you an excellent vantage point. Cooking is cumbersome but ultimately a lot of fun, as combining just about anything makes something. Weapon durability is questionable, but the endless possibilities combat presents make it fun each and every time. The story's a bit of a waste, but I'll be hard pressed not to ogle Zelda's bodacious booty, and at least the character design is overall very good. And while the game is quite difficult, sometimes unfairly so, overcoming enemies that once defeated you in one hit is immensely satisfying and gives off a feeling of growth and progression in a game that has no specific way of playing it. Puzzles can often be solved in numerous physics-breaking ways. You can cheese through combat or use the environment to your advantage. You can ignore everything, even story quests, and just go off in search of shrines, Korok seeds, horses, mini-bosses, side quests, other cool secrets. Every time I play Breath of the Wild, or every time I see someone else playing it, it always ends with me saying, wow, I didn't know I could do that, or wow, I had no idea that was there. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is not a 10 out of 10 game. There are technical issues, the story is bland and formulaic, and there are some systems in place that some will love but others will despise with a fiery passion. Some might even argue that this isn't a very good Zelda game, but Nintendo have wholeheartedly succeeded in creating one of, if not the best, open worlds ever made. One that actively encourages exploration and rewards it in a way that almost no other open world game has ever done. 7 out of 10. Well, that was a bit long for a bloody short review, oops. Anyway, who cares? I didn't really think to prepare a shout out this time around, so I'm gonna kinda wing it here. Go watch Silly Cunt, Killy Sunt, fuck, whatever, Killy Sunt. He makes, what, dubs? I don't know. His voice is hilarious. Go watch his Hannah Montana video. It's linked here, just fucking go watch it. Seriously, it's brilliant. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share my video if you think some other deranged man-child might enjoy it. Click the alert button to see my videos as soon as they come out, and turn off ad blocks so I can make like $5 this month, which I don't even receive because I need like 100 or something for the payment to go through.